The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. We have a very special guest for you today. I met him a few weeks back when I went to his training, and he is a successful podcaster. And today, podcasting has been the avenue in which people are relating information, the news, what's happening in our community, helping business grow, just sharing what we can do to help people thrive. So I want to introduce to you Eric Zane, who is here today to teach us all about podcasting and why you should consider being a podcaster and to help your business grow. So I want to introduce Eric Zane. Thank you.
Meet you.
Thank you for being here today. Oh my gosh, I am just so excited about talking about this topic because I have podcasts in the past, and my show is able to be converted to a podcast, which is going to happen very soon. But I was excited about your training because I really can't keep up on everything on the promotion, what platforms to do, and how to even become a podcast. But first of all, I want to share who you are, because a lot of people out here right now know you. And once they hear your voice, they're like, where do I know that voice? And how you went from radio to successful podcaster, which everybody wants today.
I guess. I'll just take whatever people give me, frankly.
Okay. So who is Eric Zane?
A big mouth, really. Honestly, I had strong enough of a run in radio years ago that when that dried up, and in 2019, January of 2019, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had been at more than one radio company in Grand Rapids and it didn't work out. So it was also an industry that, there wasn't a lot of growth in it. So I did not know what I was going to do, so I sat and did a podcast. And I kind of had some inkling that I could do some type of podcasting, but I didn't think I could do it every day. And then I got enough of a response from the audience that I thought, I'm going to actually try to do this every single day of the work, Monday through Friday, do a show, and try to populate it with sponsors and with enough audience to, move that meter and earn a living out of doing that. And so,
were you ever a podcast? I'm going to just jump in.
No,
were you
please.
a podcaster? Because it's similar to radio. Is it not?
Well, distribution of content in terms of putting thoughts out and ideas and things like that. Sure, there's plenty of similarities to it, but then there's also other things that, good and bad about it, that are different, and you have to kind of get used to those things. But I kind of took the idea of, all right, I'm going to talk about things that I know how to do, and then I'm going to try to sell it and sell the audience to sponsors and things like that. And so I had a head start because when I was done being on the radio, you have kind of like a built-in audience of people who are interested in you.
Didn't you do your radio every day?
I did. I was on the radio every day for many, many years. And then upon that finishing and getting fired more than once, I'm on Facebook, and then I said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. So that was really the only avenue I had with my audience, was through Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
So then I started to publish a podcast, no different than what you're going to do. And my scenario is I'm lucky because I had a built-in audience from doing radio for years. So that allowed me a foundation of audience. And then I just kept doing it a lot, every day, as much as I could, and then selling it out of my car. And I still do. I do nothing different today than what I did when I started.
Really?
Right.
All right. So you went from radio, which was, you had kind of perfected your voice. I have a higher pitch. I have a louder voice. I never have to really use a mic. I will have to tell you that.
Good.
But a lot of people are sitting there. I'm like, okay, so what do you do? Just get a mic and you start talking? How does that process work?
For me, it was a lot of trial and error. And when I found that I didn't have the luxury of doing a podcast with someone else. So I was alone, and that's tricky. And I had never been alone in all of doing radio, but I knew that there was a lot of moments where I would talk for extended time, maybe tell a story or something like that. But now we're talking about alone, no one to interact with, and then, how to wrap one story up, get the next story going. And it was baptism by fire, and frankly, it wasn't that good, frankly, but the audience stuck with me enough that, not that it's perfect now, but I've done it long enough that I can monologue for that amount of time. And when we spoke last time at Podcraft, Rush Limbaugh did that. Forget what he was talking about, but just Rush Limbaugh had very few guests on his show.
That's correct.
It was just him and his thoughts and a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard.
And the caller.
Yeah, he'd have callers too.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what I kind of crafted it after. That type of, if he can do that, I can do that. He
was kind of new to. He really brought success to the talk radio, and the platform of people who listen to AM. Right before, when I was growing up, everything was FM. Right, you listened to AM a little bit, but I would think when he came out, he was the grandfather or whatever of talk radio, radio or drive time, when people were running around, all that thing, and then he brought the idea of having what I call a conversation, like we all love to do when at dinner tables in our living room, talking about topics and people bringing their ideas and bringing them to the forefront.
Correct.
To be able to be critiqued, preview, and then you had all the other comments, like you have all the comments.
Right.
Right. But don't you think that was just like, it was like the newest concept, kind of, right? An interaction like that?
Absolutely. And what the world is now closer, being that internet content like that, I've tried to find something interesting in every single thing that happens, so that when the show ends, the day unfolds, and it's up to me to find something that has happened and make it an interesting story and add humor into it and anecdotes and let the stories weave kind of together. And when you do it long enough, you kind of get used to it, I guess.
Well, how long was your first? I do not have to keep. You mind me if I interrupt?
No, I don't mind it.
I sometimes do
what,
that,
it's
and
funny
I
you say
apologize.
that. That's how
How
people
long?
talk. That's how people talk.
Exactly. Well, and you try to be, but you really want to. Questions come in, and sometimes when you wait to the end of the conversation, you're like, "What was I going to ask again?" But all right, so let's talk about you were in a studio at home.
Yes.
And how long was your podcast, and what do you think? Do you remember what your first podcast was at?
Yes, my first podcast was actually long because I had a lot to say because I had just gotten fired from a radio station again.
And to bring that in the public.
Yeah.
That's not something people talk about in the public.
Well, it's funny because when I got fired from that job, I had enough of like I keep going back to the audience and the footprint that I had, but I was on a very, very high profile show for many, many years. Got fired from that. It was ugly, and then I went to do my own show. After 2 years, 9 months, it didn't work. The radio station changed format. That day happened. It actually went that Wood TV8 called me, and I was ill that day by chance, coincidence, but I still went into the TV station the day I got fired to talk about the radio station changing format and me getting fired, and Brian Sterling saying, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, man. I think I might just podcast." And so that was it. That was on a Friday. Saturday, I did nothing. Sunday, I podcasted. I told the story of my firing. It was in the studio that I'm in right now. But then it's like...
Did you feel like you could speak to... I mean, were you like litigation, what you could say about the studio? A lot of people worry about, I don't want to burn bridges or burn,
well, that's the thing. I did end up burning that bridge with that company to some degree. There are still people that I talk to there that I am friendly with, but... I'm kind of a jerk when it comes to that stuff. I take it so personal, Pamela. It's a huge fault. It's not a good thing. I wish. Oh gosh, it's just.
Well, what comments were left? Can you remember some of them?
Well, I just remember eventually I take everything personally. So when I get fired, that's.
Well, doesn't everyone?
Yeah, I just and so. I had an avenue to talk about it, so I'd go ahead and make rude comments about people all the time. I still do to this day. But some people say, well, that's why we love you. And it's like, well, all right, whatever. But then as time wore on, now I have to do this every single day. So then, some of those early podcasts were like 25 minutes where I'm just barely trying to get through, and you don't have anybody answering you, so it's awkward and weird and clumsy. And
are you looking at your wall? Okay, so I can imagine this, right? I'm like we're in a studio.
Yep.
And I see, all the stuff behind them of the cameras and stuff. I did you when you had a camera looking at you? Were you looking at a blank wall?
Yeah.
Did you have notes on your wall? What did you have to keep going?
Well, I've got a monitor where I put my thoughts, and I'll look when I'm doing the show. I'm looking like I am right now, and getting used to that whole concept, and then it's all live because I do my show live.
Yeah, you said that.
So
that's incredible.
You
can't take those words back.
No. But for the people who, and so I'm using all these different avenues, and then taking the audio and making a show out of it. But honestly, just a computer and just writing how I'm going to do this. So I have a little meeting with me beforehand, and I write down on a Microsoft document my list of things that I'm talking about, and these are the sponsors and when I'm going to talk about them, and just writing that out. And I have a note taker on my phone that all throughout the day I'm writing the things that I might be interested in, and then when I sit down the next day, I'm going to prioritize and then just have at it. And then adding into that, I have comments from the audience, which before I would struggle to, because it's hard when you're doing a show to read.
Right.
And you can really get into that awkward, and I still do it to this day, where I'm like, you can feel that, that awkwardness. So I kind of have to.
You can't edit that out.
Yeah, you have to be careful that you don't get too weird with the the pacing of it. So,
okay.
but my audience has really gotten good at jokes, and that is, back in the day on the radio, people would call in and add to it. So even I'm learning stuff even to this day. I've done 772 shows as of today. And
podcast?
Yeah, podcasts since I started podcasts.
That is a really good.
But I'm still learning. That's the being able to look at the interaction with them adds another layer to the show that took a while to get used to.
And now it went from difficult to getting 25 minutes. Now you're what? 3 hours? 2 hours?
I do 2, and then I deliberately shut it down. I keep it at 2 because I've got to get going, and I have more to do. Because honestly, what I get done then is after I publish that podcast, I do a second podcast.
Right after that?
Correct. Right after that, for about another 40 minutes. And what I do is during that free podcast, I'm trying to tell people to sign up for the other podcast. It's a bonus podcast, and I actually get people to pay for it. And that's for the super fan, if they want it. So I use the first podcast as a vehicle to talk about the second podcast. And what this allows me to do is open up another revenue stream so that I can eat. This is what I have to do every single day.
So you put out a free, pretty much for me or anybody else that wants to, the viewers that
Yep.
would go to you, and has everything from your website or your podcast,
Yep.
Facebook, where you can go, and then you're like, okay, so then you move them over and say, okay, for more content from you.
Yep.
It's a 40-minute podcast, and you're gonna, I don't know, pay $5.99, $10.99,
That's
whatever
exactly
it is.
what it is.
$5.99. Okay, I'm just guessing, but
Yep.
I'm just saying, and then you can give the, more, now do you go into more fun stuff or
Yes.
in depth?
Oh,
I
yeah.
won't say this free, but I'll say it to you.
Yes.
Kind of, you're exclusive. You get to hear the real
You have
story.
it. You've got it down. That's a paywall, and you're secured. See, if I talk on the open podcast or online, and I'm telling a sensitive story, sometimes that has come back to bite me. And so, if there's something super sensitive, I'll talk about it there, and they know that.
And that doesn't seem to be a problem
Nope.
with it, because they know you, right? And they want to.
Yeah, I've got a very intimate
engage.
relationship. The thing about podcasting audiences is when you have radio, you have the possibility of a mixed crowd hearing you.
Okay.
There aren't too many people who would pay for a podcast who hate you. You don't
That
have
is true.
You don't have hate listeners who are going to give you money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's become, just by doing this and just not really changing my game plan in any way, shape, or form, it's become something fantastic that I'm very, very happy with, that I want to keep growing.
You went in, and I think that's really exciting, because I did hear your podcast after our training. I've heard of you, but to hear your podcast, and Chris Antoon, who's my engineer, we share labor, and because he's really good behind the controls there. And then he has First Microgreenery, and he gives you that Mr. Micro.
This is a great story. This is a wonderful story.
Let him tell you this one. This is how this works.
I love this story, and this is a perfect example of.
And I'll pull this up for him to see.
Of opportunities.
First Microgreenery.
I walk into this studio to sit with 8 people who want a podcast. Okay.
Right.
And I'm just going to talk about, best practices and things like that, and just chit chat. And that's how I got to know Pamela. And I walk in, and there's this gentleman you're with, Chris Huntoon, who's behind the scenes.
Right.
And he gives me Mr. Micro. And what that is on his business, First Microgreenery, he's made this fun thing. You buy this kit. I know everything there is to know about this. I could do a commercial for his business because he gave me Mr. Micro. And it's a neat little kit with these wheatgrass seeds and a nylon. And you put the wheatgrass seeds into the nylon, and you glue these little eyes on it. You make a nose out of the nylon with a rubber band, and then you put it in a cup, and then you water it. And voila, it's going to grow into organic, perfect wheatgrass, which is highly nutritious, which people use in like salads and things like that, and whatever. And that's what his business is. So he gives this to me, and I think he's crazy. I'm like, what is this? What is going on? So I just thought, oh, cool, But then I went and I looked into it, and I researched him, and I go, well, now I'm going to talk about this on my podcast. Now, it's my job to take that and make it into a fun story. Was it a fun story?
It was a fun story.
Okay.
I mean, Chris couldn't, for all you podcasters out there that do promote products, and I was just, I said, Chris, you couldn't have paid for this. This guy just like down the line did everything for me to visualize the product, because I was sitting there listening to it off my phone, right, when I was over his house, and then talking about this product. We were just like, I got to learn from this guy.
Well, his story's fantastic, because he discovered that when he buys organic materials grown, and this is radishes, I believe, a radish mix.
Yeah.
That he wasn't satisfied with what you would buy at a grocery store.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
they lose their nutrients over time.
He comes up with this idea, and the next thing you know, he's in business. And I love that. I love those stories. And so I was very much impressed with that. So now my podcast is full of ridiculous trolls, points of view, idiocy, swearing, dumb stories, not safe for work material. But here I am talking about this and having a great time doing it because he gave me a wheatgrass plant.
He did.
So that's kind of how I base what I talk about. Can I talk about something and have fun with it? And it wasn't like me swearing and acting like an idiot. I was just telling what this guy does.
Right.
It was very genuine, and I enjoyed doing it. He's a really nice guy, so that was it.
Yeah, and if you don't understand microgreens, it's they grow to a certain height, and it has all the nutrients, as opposed to like a huge broccoli. You have to eat just a portion of that, and it gives you the same nutrients. And it's growing all over the world, these microgreens, and people are seeing the value of them and staying healthy, building your immune systems, all that good things. And I just, once I met Chris, I didn't understand it either.
Yeah.
You start taking them. But anyways, that's a plug for him. But that's just an example of when they meet you, right? If they met you and something like that occurs, and you're like, okay, that's content. Because I'm saying, where do you come up with content every day?
It is content. And when you're in my line of work, every new opportunity to make a friend, to talk, to be in front of, look at this. I'm in front of a camera now with you on your show right now.
Exactly.
Because we both said yes. It's Ryan Seacrest's mantra for the longest time has been he tries to always say yes. So when Tom from WKTV called me and said, you want it? I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Absolutely.
I'll do it. And then you reach out, hey, you want to be in my show? Well, of course I'll be on your show. It'd be great. So now we're friends for life. I mean, come on.
Oh, absolutely. And then, of course, I'll let you do. All right, so now your podcast has been you've done, what'd you say, 700 and some shows?
It's just over 3 years, 2 months.
2 months. Okay, so you got in it when it was just kind of really starting to come to, right?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of Mark Maron and Joe Rogan. These guys have been doing podcasting for decades now.
Right.
And but mine is being a daily show. Most people don't do daily shows.
Is it Monday through Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that allowed opportunities, but also is a lot more work, and it took a little bit of getting used to. But so not a lot of people do daily podcasts, but more people are doing daily podcasts. So
a lot of people are doing daily podcasts. I did do. We talked before the show. I had a podcast happen that I did with a friend of ours,
Right.
Stephanie Kolakowski. But as I was getting guests for both a TV show and a podcast, it was just over. And so WKTV says, why don't you just turn your show into a podcast? I'm like, thank you for help. You know, these are the ways you can do that. And many people can do it that way. Or you're seeing more YouTube channels. So share a little bit. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do.
Okay.
I
and
do.
so I thought you did, because I see images when I pull your name up
Right.
on that one. And so when you're doing your show, you're having a camera look at you, and you're also posting it on YouTube.
Yes and no. I used to do that. I used to do it exclusively YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at the same time. And then I had an opportunity to move all of that. I can still put it on there, but I was given priority by a company called Twitch.
Okay, you mentioned that at the training.
And that is, I kind of like warned the audience that I'm going to be moving the show to Twitch, so check me out there. And it's just going to another website. And
Okay.
Twitch was purchased by Amazon. Now, Twitch had normally been for people who play video games, and then they narrate what they're playing.
Okay.
You know, and they've got headsets on and they're talking. And then Amazon reached out to content creators and said, we want shows on here now. And so that somebody reached out to me about putting the show on there, and when I was ready to do that, I did that. But it's still an opportunity to, I can also, when I go on Twitch, I can put it on Facebook at the same time, and then at any moment, I can say to the audience on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, hey folks, I'm ending the feed on Facebook, join me on Twitch for the rest of the show.
Okay.
So it gets more people. So it's all about getting more eyes on you, getting more people to subscribe. But back to the thing about YouTube and Facebook, plenty of opportunity and I just use Twitch, but people can use YouTube and make money doing that too. There's plenty of opportunities to do that.
Well, you see them out there.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's been, when I started podcasting, this was back in 2020, and you just started off your podcast like you would do this interview show. Now you're seeing more of the music,
more produced, you mean?
Produced, like they're not even starting the podcast. I mean, some of these podcasters, you don't even get into their content for like 14, 15 minutes. It's music, and they're walking around their little made-up studio at home, like maybe their desk
The
or whatever.
sky's the limit.
And I'm just like, people really stay, do you understand? I don't know, tell me what the best way to, how do you start besides just can you just take your phone and do it?
You
How
could,
do you start?
you could quite literally. I know when I started, all I used was a phone.
Okay.
To put my show out. So yes, you could absolutely do that. And I think it's anybody can do it, but
Right.
You have to work at it to do it right. And then there's a lot of best practices, as I mentioned before, to help you grow. And I think ultimately what needs to happen is you need to have someone who's doing content that's first of all worthy of being watched.
That's
that is the number one thing.
Right.
You have to be able to have something that people are going to want.
Like a niche, that they don't want,
It could be about a topic, like you said, or something interesting. There's a topic for everything that can be discussed. Or you could be the funniest person in the world. and doing it.
How much does humor have to be part of it to grow?
Well, I guess it's all whatever the creator is comfortable doing. It could be serious. I mean, it could be talking about religion. It could be talking about, any topic, as long as it's well done.
Okay.
Okay, as long as it's watchable and listenable. As long as a person has the acumen and the ability to carry that load of, I'm going to put my thoughts out there and people are going to enjoy it or get something out of it, or it's going to be compelling, no matter what it is. The topic doesn't matter as long as whoever is delivering it is good at it.
Right. Well, and you talk about anything, right? Pretty much.
Correct.
Is there anything that you stay away from?
No, not really. I tend to, I don't sit there and get overly serious about the world. I mean, I do talk about things that are going on in the world that are serious. Like I talk about Ukraine, I talk about right versus left. So those are big topics.
Those are very big
topics.
topics.
But I have to find a way to talk about it. And I when I say that, I don't mean like I'm looking to not offend anyone. I just say what I want to say. And I've made that very clear to them, that when you sign up for or watch what I'm talking about, I'm probably going to upset someone at some point.
Now so your free stuff, would you talk politics on your free?
Sure.
And then when do you move them over when you're, I mean, this is the thing, there's the gray line. Everything's got a fine line. And freedom of thought, to pretty much is thought, then speech, and then words, and then then you get the feedback.
Yeah.
Now what would be like today is like, people just, they're sitting there waiting to give you know what I'm saying? They don't even, but I want to hear what you have to say because it makes me think. And sometimes people that I don't always agree with always kind of, well, I never thought of it that way. That's an interesting way to think about it.
I think it, for me, it boils down to just how I feel in the moment. Like, for me to sit down every single day and talk about COVID or Ukraine, previously COVID, now Ukraine, I kind of like, what am I interested in right now? Like right now as I'm sitting here, what am I interested in? And then I kind of build upon that. Because what I'm most interested right now is probably what I'm going to do the best at talking about. And usually it's more of just my thoughts and my opinions as opposed to I'm going to give you facts about the world. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like my take on what I'm seeing.
Okay.
And so, and I try to deliver it concisely, sometimes in a funny manner, sometimes in a serious manner, sometimes inflammatory that's going to upset someone, but whatever. It's the internet, it's the world. We're not, I try to differentiate myself, like this is a place where I'm just going to speak my mind, and that's it.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to do a part 2. And we're going to start talking about really we're going to talk about a little bit about cancel culture, which is kind of what we just but people are afraid to say certain things, how they should be looking at what they have around them to do a podcast, and how to promote what social media platforms, even though we did discuss that a little bit. But we want to talk a little bit more about this. This is Pamela Keim from Grantat Media, and we are going to go part 2 with Eric Zane, the successful podcaster, because we want to help others that maybe are thinking about doing a podcast and just want to start. And where do you start? And how do you even promote? So stay tuned for next week for part 2. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
All right.